Good afternoon and welcome to our very first SPORTEL eTalks, coming to you live from Monaco Mediax in the Principality of Monaco. eTalks are an engaging new series of online panels launching for the SPORTEL and wider sports business community and have been strategically designed to complement our SPORTEL live events while continuing to connect with the community digitally. My name is Joanna Murchie and I'm the Conference Executive Director at SPORTEL, and we're delighted so many of you, over 300 and counting, have registered today and to address the core SPORTEL values of sports, media rights and new broadcast strategies. We've got two great sessions lined up today, starting in just a minute. We have session one, SPORTEL Masters State of the Industry. We'll talk about the shift in sports media rights strategies. Then after a quick break at 3 p.m, we have session two, Digital Sports Media Transforming the Broadcast Industry, and all about new streaming and broadcast strategies. Both sessions include key decision makers whose personal expertise and international companies include several long-standing and valuable members of the SPORTEL community, and they are all shaping the future of the industry along with you. We're looking forward to them sharing their expert insight with you throughout the two sessions. You can also follow us on our social media channels and continue the conversation by using the hashtag eTalks. So before we get started, I just want to run through a few quick housekeeping notes with you. Please feel free to use the chat box to share comments with panelists and attendees, and you can select panelists and attendees to share your messages with everyone. You should see this on your toolbar at the bottom of your screens. You can tell us where you're from, what time of day it is for you, wherever you're coming from, because we have people from all over the world, and you can add any comments throughout the sessions here. However, any questions you may have should go in the Q&A box, not the chat box, please. And do please upvote any questions you see, and even your own questions that you want to hear answered, as the moderator will open up the questions with the most upvotes live with the panelists at the end of each session. I'd also like to say a big thank you to our CEO, Laurent Piance, for enabling us to bring you this exciting initiative, and of course to the fantastic eTalks team and all our colleagues at Monaco Mediax who've helped us prepare for today. Big shout out though today to some of you have already met, Jennifer, our host today, who will be navigating us all through the production throughout the sessions today. So before it's time to lead us into our first session, we have a quick poll for you just to check you're awake, which Jen will pull up for us. So if you'd all like to just click on which you think is the right answer. What year was the first SPORTEL held in Monaco? Was it 1989, 1990, 1991, or 1995? And you can vote now. And that's going to be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we will have the answer for you in just a couple of seconds. And let's see, we have got 27% of you at 1989, 24% of you at 1990, with a tie of 24% at 1991 and 25% at 1995. You've got it wrong. It was in fact 1990, unless I'm mistaken here, but most of you said 1989, but never mind, better luck next time. So okay, well, we're ready now to move on. So we're ready to start the first session. And that's when I'd really like to introduce you to the moderator, our SPORTEL Super Sales Agent, Mr. Nick Volante, and he will introduce you to the speakers. So enjoy the session and I'll be back later.
Well, thank you so much, Joanna. What an introduction. How to follow that. But nevertheless, I'd like to thank Joanna as well as the entire SPORTEL team for organizing this fantastic event, and also thank you to the speakers as well as our audience. As we know, the world has changed over the last 18 months, and the international sports media industry has had to evolve at a pace that we've never seen before. Today's panel will give us the opportunity to speak with some of the legends of the industry about the past 18 months, as well as how are we going to move forward. I'd like to now take this opportunity to introduce our speakers. With first up, we have Victor Cui, CEO of International and CEO of One Elite Agency at One Championship. A special thank you for joining us, Victor, because I know you're calling in from Canada and it's approximately 6 a.m. So hey, thank you very much. Next step, we have Amikam KRANZ, AKA Kimmy. He's VP of Media and Operations, and he's also a member of Group Management over at INFRONT. Next, we have Thierry PASCAL, who's a Managing Director of EMEA and SVP of International Media over at PGA Tour. Thierry, I saw on your LinkedIn that you've just done your 17th anniversary at PGA Tour, so congratulations on that.
Thank you, you're making me feel old.
All right, well, welcome everybody. And to kick things off, I'd like to quickly go around the table so that the speakers can introduce themselves. Victor, why don't you start us off?
Thank you very much, and hello to everybody. Hello from Edmonton, minus 20 degrees right now, or something like that. My name is Victor Cui. I'm the CEO International for One Championship, and I've been very, very fortunate to be Group CEO and Chairman Chakrasitya Tong. Sometimes it's crazy for me to think that 10 years ago it was me sitting in an office all by myself, and today we are at about 300 staff, 9 offices around the world, broadcast globally, have some amazing partnerships. We're backed by the Singapore government, Sequoia Capital, and today valued at around $1 billion. And it's just been an amazing journey of growth and changes in the industry. And I look forward to sharing our story with you.
Yes, fantastic. It's been such a great growth story in regards to One Championship. And back in the day, I used to live in Singapore. So it's always good to see a homegrown talent, right? All right, moving on, Kimmy.
Yes, hello, and thanks for having me. I'm actually in Zurich right now at home. We're still in home office. And yeah, I've been with INFRONT for a long time, since 2004. Originally, I'm a trained solicitor, and then moved to INFRONT actually as working in the legal department. And then in the last 16 or 17 years, I moved really from legal to summer sports to winter sports. And since our restructuring 1.5 years ago, I'm overseeing really anything which has to do with media. So media sales, media operations, digital account management, media intelligence. So anything which really has to do with moving images falls within my ambit, I would say. And yeah, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the challenges and for the job I have. But and I'm very happy to be in this lineup. So thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we're happy to have you. Okay, and moving on to Thierry.
Thank you, Nick. Firstly, I'm here in London, not quite the same as Miami where we were 12 months ago, but I guess we're dealing the best we can in these weird times. As you rightly said, I've been 17 years at the tour, 14 of those years in the States at our headquarters in Sawgrass, and the last 3 years I've been based out of London. We opened an office here 3 or 4 years ago. I run our media rights business, and you may be aware that a couple of years ago we entered into a long-term partnership with Discovery, whereby all our media rights went into this new venture with them, and we launched our OTT product, Golf TV, powered by PGA Tour. So I work very closely with the Discovery team in our media rights distribution business.
Perfect. Well, that's fantastic. And why don't we, now that we've done the introductions, why don't we move into the opening questions? Going back to Victor, One Championship is Asia's largest sports media companies. What do you have in the pipeline in regards to fresh content?
Well, I think it goes without saying that COVID has thrown the whole entire sports industry for a loop. Pre-COVID, we were holding, close to 24 events a year all across Asia, and we were basically a traveling circus, from every other week from country to country. In the COVID period, we were the first sport property in Asia to relaunch and we held our first event in Thailand, and that event was completely remotely run by our team. We ran it from, we were trying to do the best that we can, and the technology that was available around us, and everything from WhatsApp messages and Zoom phone calls on our mobile phone to run the event with our local team on the ground. Today, we now have in Singapore, and we're one of the first properties in Southeast Asia to do that. And we've developed a whole new line of protocol and process in partnership with the Singapore government, who have been incredibly innovative in this period and very supportive of everything that we are doing and that the sports industry is doing to try and bring it back alive. So we were actually the first property in the stadium, in a stadium arena, to hold an event with an audience. It was a limited audience, but the goal is to get the protocol in place, to have athletes, officials, and fans safely in the venue and be able to safely execute the event.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I was also checking out your website, and you have a new series coming out. It's the Apprentice, right? It's not your uncle's apprentice. I think that's the tagline, right?
That's right. So we have moved into a little bit of reality TV, taken the Apprentice brand, but completely reinvented it. Put in, not only brought in a whole new aspect of physical challenges, but we brought superstars and athletes from all around the world to bring participants from around the world for this opportunity to be a part of the Apprentice. It's got a global brand.
We seem to have lost Victor there. But let's never mind. We'll get Victor back online. But let's move on to the next question. Kimmy, I know that you've been working with INFRONT for 15, 16 years, right? And INFRONT have been one of the leading agencies for 15 or 20 years. Given the last 18 months, how have you guys adapted?
Yeah, look, obviously the last 12 months, I would say since March roughly. I also recall the last Miami SPORTEL as sort of my last proper trip. Obviously the last 12 months had a huge impact on not only on us, on the whole business. We feel we've seen a return to normality with obviously more regular events taking place and being broadcast. And for us, I think what we have done, or what we've tried to do, is to really talk a lot to our broadcast partners. And I'm only talking, of course, we have sponsorship partners and other partners, but I'm talking, let's say, from my side. We really try to talk to them and make the best of a very tough, difficult situation. And the cancellation of so many events last year obviously created unique challenges that we've never faced before, for all parties, by the way, not only for the federations and leagues, but for us, the broadcasts, for everyone. And we felt that as long as you are open, fair, transparent, you can find ways to handle such a situation and to really help each other. And I think this is in really with most of our partners, we managed to find good solutions, be it with small things, especially in the beginning part of the pandemic, is, to give broadcasters archive material. But also after, when we had to discuss cancellations, it was about being open, and also, of course, at the same time, trying to be agile and finding new solutions, new ways to help each other. I think this would be sort of my summary of the last 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody is doing their best to adapt as quickly as possible, and it's all about relationships, right? So also I was looking online, and I saw that you've recently I think you've renewed your partnership with the Professional Squash Association. Is that correct?
We started it, actually. It was
sorry.
Exactly, we started it, and exactly this was actually another factor that we not only renewed quite a few of our relationships, but we found new partnerships as well, and there are a few, hopefully more, in the pipeline. So this was also something that it gave, I think, everyone a bit of time to think and rethink models and see how you can work together. And this collaboration, obviously, or the start of this collaboration, is a good example of this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, and now going over to Thierry. We know that the PGA Tour has been leading the way with digital innovation for many, many years. Everybody, I think, is wanting to know a bit more about this partnership. So can you tell us a little bit about your partnership with Amazon that you recently announced?
Absolutely. Look, we're really excited about the AWS deal, whereby they become the official cloud partner of the PGA Tour. And what I think they're going to do is they're going to help us both modernize the way that golf content is created and ultimately distributed globally. So the deals means that we can utilize their range of services to enhance new and existing products for our fans. So for example, this week, and actually today, is arguably the most important day of the year for us, because it's the start of our flagship event, the Players Championship in Sawgrass, which the players teed off about an hour ago. So we're really excited about that. And for those of you that know, producing golf coverage is not the same as producing coverage of a One Championship event. I don't know how many cameras you need, Victor, for a One Championship event, but on the PGA Tour, for an event like the Players Championship, we have 144 players out there. We have 120 cameras producing content. In a normal golf event, you're only seeing 10% of the actual coverage that's happening on the course. It's just the nature of our sport. So this week we have a product called Every Shot Live, which means that we will be providing every single shot of every single player over the 4 rounds live to fans. How are we doing that? Well, that's about 32,000 shots over the course of the 4 days. So we're going to have, of those 120 cameras on course, we're going to have about 93 dedicated to following every single player. Not all of those are camera operated. I think about 28 of those we have operators on site. The rest are remote. And there will be over 50 live streams made available, put up on the cloud and distributed globally. But in the US, it's going to be on our digital platform on NBC Sports Gold, and internationally it'll be on Golf TV powered by PGA Tour, and we actually have licensed some content to some of our broadcast partners. So for example, Sky in the UK will have some of those feeds as well. The other thing is, because this is a new and innovative service, as you said, Nick, is we're going to actually make that in the US, it's going to be available today for free to all fans. So we think that's something we're really proud of, to be able to pull that off, and obviously with our relationship with AWS, that makes it so much simpler. So it's an exciting week ahead for us.
No, fantastic. No, I think for fans of golf, it's especially the hardcore fans, they're going to absolutely love that. Every shot, you have access to absolute all content, whether you want to follow all the players. And I think, yeah, well, let's see. Well, good luck with that. And no doubt it will be a huge success.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to our first question now of the agenda. Let's start with you, Kimmy. In regards to media rights negotiations and contracts, what do you think will be the lasting changes caused by COVID-19?
Look, I think obviously the topic, when we really talk about contracts, media rights contracts, I think the topic of force majeure will be a more heavily discussed topic in contract negotiations in the future. I have to say, obviously, unfortunately, because, you know, and I think when you used to do contracts, we didn't think too much about it, especially you know, when it came to, unfortunately, not when we talked about sports events, but this will be definitely one of the topics. But generally, I think if you talk about what will be one of the lasting points or let's say memories, for me, it is really, notwithstanding this crisis and notwithstanding the pandemic, is that how important sports is for the global population, really. And even in tough times where you know, there are people who have went through really bad times, I think people were really looking forward to having sports back on television, and, you know, just to forget about your daily griefs, daily issues, daily problems. I personally, and I don't, you know, I went through this fortunately in a very good way, without having anyone in my family getting sick or anything. But still, I was super happy when the first sport started. I think when it came to football, I think it was the Bundesliga. And I think this is something that is a great thing for us, I think, for all the panelists to know that sports is relevant and sports will remain relevant, even almost a necessity for people to forget about maybe the issues that they have. So this is one of the main, I would say, messages I would take when it comes to the pandemic and sports. Obviously, there are much more important things coming out of the pandemic, but when we're talking about this, I really felt people want to talk about, want to see something on television.
No, absolutely. I can really relate to that, since I was here in the south of France on last weekend. We were on the lockdown. Is it last weekend or the weekend before? We were on the lockdown, and I was really looking forward to England playing Wales in the Six Nations, because of course we were going to beat Wales. Unfortunately, we didn't, and it ruined my weekend. But other than that, yes, the theory is correct. Anyway, moving on to Thierry for this question in regards to contracts and negotiations for the future in the world of golf. How do you think it'll affect them?
Yeah, look, Kimmy, you made a good point. I mean, I learned what the words force majeure mean, certainly, and
so did we at SPORTEL, but anyway.
Yeah, it's not quite what I envisaged it, to be honest with you. And like Kimmy, and like all rights holders, you know, we spend a good chunk of our year. We have 3 months that are of cancelled events, and we spend a great amount of time building on the relationships with our broadcasters around the world in terms of dealing with rebates. And again, Kimmy is right to reinforce the message. It's like being fair. And I think actually what I've found is that this hasn't been too disruptive. Most broadcasters have been very understanding. We've worked with them through the period of no events and try and find solutions to keep things going. And we've all taken a pretty pragmatic approach to this. And I actually think it's strengthened our partnership. So again, as long as you're fair, I think it's actually something that we've learned and got through. So the other observation actually I wanted to make was it's interesting because we haven't been able to travel, and you said earlier, Nick, this business is based on relationships. It just is.
Absolutely.
You know, if in any renewal discussions that we've been on, you know, we haven't been able to spend time with people, sit down with them. And what I think has tended to happen is you because again you've had to deal with rebates with incumbents, you've tended to use that as a way to renew a rights deal. And so in a normal day or a normal year, you'd be out in the marketplace, drumming up competition, drumming up interest. And I just feel like, you know, rightly or wrongly, that hasn't happened this year. Hopefully it will get back to the norm in the future. But I think probably most rights holders will have renewed with their incumbents because it's the best and was the easiest way to do things, rather than, you know, actually being out there in the marketplace. I know Kimmy, INFRONT have offices all over the place. You know, PGA Tour don't, obviously Discovery do. So I think that's been an interesting learning, and hopefully that would change when we can travel again. The other interesting, just as an aside from the PGA Tour side, I think we've learned. I talked earlier about the amount of production that was required for a golf event. We've learned about how to produce live golf with fewer people on site because of COVID protocols. Yep. So it's much more remote style production. I think we've learned from that. It will ultimately save money in terms of production, in terms of travel costs. And the other thing of interest is that our events are 99% in the US. So we have a global audience, we have global players, and media from around the world, they can't travel week in, week out to the US to spend time interviewing players and stuff. And so we created a virtual media center out of need. And that has now become something we're going to take to the future, and journalists around the world will be able to tune in via Zoom with our teams to interview their players on the ground at these virtual media centers. So out of COVID, there's a lot of bad, but there's some really good and innovative things that have come out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really interesting as well. I think now for Victor, in regards to Asia Pacific, anything you'd like to highlight for this question?
On the bad side of it, it felt at one point like everything that could go wrong was going wrong. And but on the positive side of it, I found that you really got to understand the strength of your partnerships that you had in place, whether it was with broadcast partners or sponsors, and even the strength of your own team. And I'm just so fortunate that our team at One Championship is innovative and on fire all the time. And this was a period where they really embraced the perspective of how do we emerge from this stronger, and how do we innovate faster to deliver our product to our fan base and to our partners. Whereas we had some, and that was the attitude that many of our broadcast partners and sponsors had. They were looking to innovate, but we also had friends and partners that looked at it like, well, this was a forced holiday, and they just kind of sat back and were waiting for things to change, and were not as excited or looking at this as an opportunity. And they were, like many people, shell-shocked by what was happening and the extent of the changes. So I think overall, net coming out of it, what I feel is our relationships have gotten better. We were able to really get to the core of what was important in the partnerships, and they were able to quickly understand what our team was able to deliver. And actually, I feel that 2021 has put us in a better position for the future to tackle even any other challenges.
Yeah, okay. No, I think summing up what everybody has said, it's all about relationships. It's all about people, right? So whether you have a 5-page contract or a 50-page contract, ultimately it's that relationship you have with the people on the other side. And as Victor said, it's also about the relationships you have with the people on your team, to make sure that everything, even through the very challenging times like we've had, that you work together, you find a solution, and then of course you fight for the better days. So we are going to get through this one day, and you're going to have even stronger relationships, and then you can even make business, build business even better. So I think that's kind of the summary of that question. So let's move on to the next one. And there question 2, actually at the end of our discussion of question 2, we're going to be opening it up as a poll. So all of our viewers can actually take the opportunity to share with us what they think the answer will be. But this will only open after we've completed this discussion of the question. So the question is, have media rights valuations reached their peak? I think at Sportel, it's the favorite question every year. Been talking about it for 32 years, and everybody seems to think that it's always somebody said, yes, we've reached the peak. And depending who you ask and which part of the country you ask, some people would say yes and some people would say no. But let's go back to the experts. Thierry, for you?
Look, as a rights holder, I hope not. There's no straight, simple answer to this. I mean, it's different in different markets. I mean, if you look what came in overnight from the US and the announcement of the NHL deal with ESPN, I mean, tell me, am I wrong? That's a significant increase within, and the conversations that are ongoing at the moment with the NFL rights, they're talking about doubling the rights fee. So I'd say that certainly in a market, now US is a little bit different from other parts of the world, but I think we can learn from what's going on there and see how they're adapting to what's happening in terms of cord cutters, etc. The big media companies, they're adapting, they're launching digital products. So ESPN have launched ESPN Plus, and and NBC have launched Peacock, and they're understanding in the future as people leave traditional linear and go to digital, they need to be in that space, and they're being quite aggressive. They're securing long-term deals for sports rights, and I think you'll continue to see, as I said, certainly for the major leagues, rights fees will continue to increase. I think there might be a trickle-down effect that the sort of secondary sports or minor sports may suffer for that, because budgets are still going to be allocated to the major sports, and maybe you're not seeing so much for those secondary sports, which means they're going to have to adapt as well. We're lucky again in golf, as I said earlier, that we have the ability to produce so much more content, so we can create new content packages that we can license. Last year, again, literally 1 year ago, we announced our domestic deal in the US that starts next year, and we continue with NBC and CBS, but we moved all our digital content to this new partnership with ESPN, and we're creating new content for that platform, which we can monetize. So I think, as I said, as long as you continue to look at new ways to produce content that can attract a different audience or drive additional revenues, that's gonna support our business. I think the business is going to get meaner and leaner, so I think there'll be fewer channels in the future, but there'll be more platforms, and whether it's aggregators in the sort of digital space, the DAZNs or other people like that continue to be aggressive. I still think there are opportunities for rights holders. And look, let's be honest, live sports is still unique in that it does drive audiences, it does engage. People are prepared to pay for live sports. So I'm not going to say it's the death of media rights yet, and it's that we've reached that mountain, but I'll let Victor speak to Asia. I know that, suddenly in some of our negotiations in Asia, we're seeing a rapid change. Linear is starting to drop off, digital's being more aggressive, and we're in that transition period. So I think that media rights are going to struggle to grow at the same percentage they have in the past in Asia, but hopefully in the future that will increase again.
No, I can imagine. And also, everybody understands that the US market is very special in regards to how the market itself and how the negotiation of the contracts are in regards to the length of the contracts, etc., compared to, let's say, Europe and other places. So I think that's going to be very interesting to watch. So yeah, as you said, why don't we go over to Victor and say how this is working in Asia, because I know that One Championship, you have a lot of broadcast partners across all of Asia as well as the world. Do you generally work more with free-to-air, or you're kind of open to?
Well, we work with both, but in many parts of Asia, free-to-air is still the #1 channel. Of course, in market by market, things are different, but I really look at, as a rights holder, I look at this from a different lens. And I think many rights holders have looked at it from a different lens for a long time. It's not about how deep are the pockets of the broadcasters and what do they want to open. I think the onus is actually on me as a rights holder to deliver an increasingly more valuable property that those broadcasters want. So the innovation has to come from our side. And the way I look at it is, you need to put the fan first. And we put the fan first in everything that we do. Because as long as we are delivering a product that is bringing the fans and people from all around the world that want to gather because of this property that you are putting together, or this platform that you are delivering your content on, as long as the fans are coming there, then that means the media rights will follow, the sponsorship will follow. And so to me, that's the central part of it, because it doesn't matter if I innovated and made the best broadcast quality product, but nobody was watching it, right? So, and I think that level of innovation in some parts of Asia has really increased faster than others. I mean, obviously everybody looks to North America to the level of innovation that they're doing, but when it comes to the broadcast partnerships in Asia, a few years ago, many networks were not even considering taking the digital rights or understanding how those integrate together. But today, of course, comes hand in hand, and you wouldn't have any discussion without that. But I'm finding that extends even deeper into not just your core content when you are live, but how does that partnership extend when you're not live? What are you doing every day, every minute for those fans all around Asia or all around the world that want to access your content whenever they want to access it.
And in regards to your content, because Asia is so, Asia is such a fantastic, it's not a market, it's multiple markets, every country is different. It has its own culture, it has its own business practices. I mean, to be, let's say, the largest sports media agents, or sports marketing, sports media property in Asia. I mean, how do you deal with that? Because every market you go into, you must have a different strategy, and it's different people, different cultures.
Well, everyone talks about, oh, Asia's so big, 4 billion people, and on one time, 2 billion people in one time zone, and blah 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 blah. And of course, yeah, but it is a very, very complex market, and we have to deliver, like any other broadcaster, multiple feeds in multiple languages with multiple commentaries, and COVID made that even more complex. But I do believe that there is no choice. When I worked at ESPN Star Sports 15 years ago or whatever, you were allowed to deliver one feed to every broadcaster in Asia in English. And you're just like, well, that's all you get.
Yeah.
Take it,
That's crazy today.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it. You know, without a doubt, if you want to reach your Thai fan, your Indonesian fan, there has to be some localization. I think the great thing about it is technology has moved to a point from a broadcast perspective where carving out your content and delivering unique content market by market is feasible. We can deliver customized branding that is for Thailand that's completely different than what you'd see on the TV product in Indonesia. And that has become increasingly easier to do, both from an executional perspective, but just from a flawless level of technology.
Okay, well, that's a very good answer. And Kimmy, from an agency point of view, what do you think?
First of all, I guess I need to be a bit careful, because if I say that it will stop to increase, or we've reached a plateau, then the broadcasters will tell me in my next negotiation, but you said it yourself, that it has reached a plateau. And the same, or the other way around, if I say revenues will increase, then our rights holders will tell me, you said it yourself, revenues will increase. So I need to be a bit careful, because we are an agency and we're in the middle. But joking aside, I feel there is a bit of a plateau at the moment. You've seen it with some rights holders going out in the market, be it for domestic rights or not. But then again, as Thierry mentioned, there are other examples where you have seen, again, increases, which again shows you that it really depends very much on the product. It depends, and it depends on the territory that you go to. You go to some territories right now, they are burning more or less. There's huge competition between new entrants to the market and established broadcasters or platforms. And then you go to markets where it really, you feel it's a saturated, consolidated market right now. But this changes, and it has always changed with new entries to the market. So I would say maybe at the moment, yeah, you feel a little bit that for the first time, there are a little bit, there's a bit of a plateau. But again, only in some territories, only also with respect to some properties. There are those products which are still going up, and so it really depends. And otherwise, I can only confirm what Thierry and Victor have said. It really is on us, the rights holder, and let's say the agency that helps to make the product better, to increase the interest. And and we've seen it, and I think it was Thierry who said it. It's sports, and I think I said it before as well. Sports is still driving it. It's driving audience, and it's driving revenue. So I do feel that with the right reaction, let's say, to the issues that we faced in the last 12 months, we have already seen going back to normality, and it will continue. But I think generally the last 12 months, with everything that was really tough for everyone on all different levels, I think it has shown us that sometimes you need to be maybe happy with the deal you have done, or that I think Thierry mentioned as well. You know, you have a good partner, be careful to treat him nicely and to extend the contract, and to make sure that, yes, maybe there's for 1 or 2 years no increase, but then hopefully by working together, cooperating, demand will go up again, you will develop the product, and revenues will go up. So I would say I'm as hopeful as Thierry and Victor that it will continue to go up, but I think we need to be also sometimes humble, and that is definitely the last 12 months have taught us that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think ultimately everyone on this call and most people that are watching, it's probably good for us if the media rights values continue to go up so that we all have jobs, right? But I think ultimately, do you think that if COVID-19 hadn't happened, do you think it would have just gone straight up, or do you think there would have been a consolidation like there is now, or is it just not possible to answer? Anyone can answer that if you have a magic ball. No? Okay. No problem.
It's a tough one. Yeah. I think it's a tough one, Nick. You know, no one knows what would have happened, but I think we've been hit, all of us, the industry, and you could see it, or you can feel it.
No, that's fair enough.
The only thing I would add, Nick, is I think there's an acceleration towards digital. That's this impasse this year has moved that forward a little bit quicker than possibly would have happened.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay, well, why don't we now move on to our poll? So my colleagues are now going to launch the poll, and you'll have about 10 seconds to answer it, and then we'll look at the results. So hopefully everybody can see that on the screen, and let's see what comes in. So just so everybody knows, the question is, have media rights valuations reached their peak? So speakers, you can't answer, unfortunately, but we're going to find out. So the answers can be yes, no, or it's too early to say.
So let's just be clear. My job relies on this answer coming out.
I think everyone does. All of our jobs are. So hold your breath, right?
It depends how much of the audience out there are rights holders or broadcasters.
Yep, that's true. Okay, we're just counting up the results. And I think, can everybody see the results? But anyway, what we found out is, to the question, have media rights valuations reached their peak? We've had 15% say yes. We've had a 48% say no. And we have the 37% saying it's too early to say. So I think we can all come back to work tomorrow and still be all right for a bit.
That's good.
All right, so let's move on to question 3. Go back to Kimmy. Regarding Generation Z, is this demographic a problem for the traditional sports model?
I only see it as a problem if you refuse to adapt. I think, of course, there has been changes, but you always had changes, you know. So I think no. I personally, and I think we as INFRONT, we see it as an exciting opportunity. You know, it's a changing landscape at the moment, and there is a generational shift from linear broadcast to multiple channels, but that's good. You know, it gives us new opportunities. We need to adapt. We need to change. But I'm generally a big believer in sort of, let's say, the 360 view. I really believe that we need to make sure to get this younger generation to the sports, to the various sports. And for this, we need technology, we need innovation, we need everything we discussed before about digital. But on the other hand, we want to keep all of the fans, also the older ones there, and we need also still the traditional means of linear television, i.e., what does it mean? It is key to listen to fans and to cater to their needs. I think that is the key. So I don't see it as a problem. I see it rather as an opportunity.
Well, as we always say, the industry is ever evolving. So if you're going to keep up with the pace, then you've got to change. I mean, going to Victor over here, One Championship has such a strong young fan base. How do you guys do it?
Yeah, I don't think that the challenge is about one generation, Gen Z, Gen Y, or whatever. It's always been about how do you reach the new fan? How do you reach the people that can grow your business? And I think we, as someone who's been in the sports media industry for over 25 years now, I do get comfortable into this routine where I know I'm going to see my old friends at SPORTEL, and we're going to get together and we're going to be able to rehash our war stories and then hopefully strike new and bigger deals. But I think sometimes we forget that it was just only a few years ago that if I presented to my boss, hey, let's integrate Twitter into our programming, they were like, Twitter? What? Twitter? That's pointless. It really was not that long ago. Maybe I'm going to call it, 7 years ago that it was not something that was readily embraced. And today you don't even think about that. Now it gets even more complex. You're like, all right, how do we have live engagement brought into our live broadcasts? And whether it's TikTok innovations or Instagram, and it's set multiple screen experiences and all those kind of things. So I love the innovation that is coming out now. And I think it's that's what's exciting to me. It would be sad as a person in this industry if the content that you produced today and that you watched today looked exactly like your show that you had 10 years ago. So I think that pressure should be there. It's fantastic. And again, back to as rights holders and as broadcasters to continue to make our product better and better.
Okay, that's a very thorough answer. And now, Thierry, do you think it is a challenge for rights holders to get young fans to pay for content?
Look, it's interesting because I think about 5 years ago, I was asked a similar question about the millennials. And I think the millennials are paying now. So, but again, that's a flippant answer. But I think the point is right, what Victor said. You need to adapt. You need to produce content that is going to serve a multitude of fans in different formats. The golf audience tends to lean a little bit older. So to Kimmy's point, you can't just ignore them. So, we'll continue to adapt our core product in terms of how they like to watch golf, but we have to also create content that is going to be consumed by younger audience who spend all their time on digital platforms. And we have to market to them in a way that speaks their language. So it's just adaptability. But I do think that core sports fans will pay for content ultimately. It's just the price point. I know today's not about piracy, but that is an issue, and it is an issue that the whole industry has to handle and manage, because it is a problem. But I think the reality is that, to answer the question, I do think that Gen Z will pay for it as long as it's in a format that they want to consume. And that's what rights holders are about. We have to think about our audience. It should be a fan-first approach. How do they want to consume our sports? The core fan will follow us wherever. The general sports fans, you're going to have to work a little harder.
Yeah. And what I love about your whole new, what you brought up earlier about covering every single shot. I mean, that embraces the philosophy of delivering content to the fan of they can watch exactly anything that they want and how they want and when they want it, right? I mean, that's an experience to sports really that is, I think, cutting edge.
Yeah, no, Victor, you made the point earlier. It's like, for us, we produce a feed from the US that is sent to the rest of the world, and it's a US director that's deciding what players they want to follow. Well, in Norway, they might want to see their homegrown player. In Singapore, they may want to see their homegrown player. Now, and it's about localization. We can provide the homegrown players to that audience, not just, they don't need to be dictated to by a US director. And that's key. And we're lucky in our sport that we have a huge growth of international players coming from all over the world to play in. So you can create local heroes in those markets. And as long as you can produce and provide content to those players. It's people love to support successful players from their part of the world. It's that sort of Olympic thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to the question and answer session of our session. So I'm going to just going to open up here to see which questions have been submitted and which ones have been voted to the top of the list. We have one question here from Anna. Thierry, what do you personally think are the advantages of airing on a platform such as Amazon in comparison to terrestrial TV?
I guess a platform like Amazon, digital platforms have the capacity to take multiple streams, multiple significant amount of content, whereas terrestrial, it's linear, it's scheduled programming, so there's probably the capacity to do much more. Amazon, obviously, it's a totally different business model from traditional television. So look, we want to be in both spaces. We want to have relationships with the Amazons of this world, and we want to continue to have relationships with linear TV. And it goes to my point earlier about the audiences that consume your sports. Some want to stay on traditional TV, some want to watch on digital, and you have to be in both spaces.
Okay, and we have is anyone else actually, before we move on to the next question, anyone else want to chime in on that? No? Stumped them. Well done, Thierry. The only guy who can answer the question. Okay, we'll moving on to the second question. We have, what are the chances of languages like Spanish and the environment? Oh, sorry, apologize, it's moving. What are the chances of languages like Spanish on the environment of the sports broadcaster when platforms like DAZN or others do not translate some of their content for cost reasons? So basically saying, again, actually this comes back to what Victor had said, that in Asia Pacific you can watch I don't know, a football match in 15 territories, but you have to watch it in English. So I guess that's the similar question. But I think what he's asking is, when platforms like DAZN and others don't translate, what happens? Is it because of cost or?
Yeah, obviously there's always a balance between what you want to deliver and the resources that you can allocate to it, both in terms of manpower and money. But again, if we take our cues from the world of esports and what they're doing, you're seeing that they're finding new ways to deliver multiple language content around esports in a way that traditional sports doesn't think of. So we look at the model of delivering our sport property with a traditional TV commentator team, a professional team of experts, and that delivers our content. Esports has elements of that, but it also integrates the opportunity for basically anybody to comment and anybody to be a commentator on a live stream, and they can deliver that in their local language. Now, of course, you're going to get some people who do that and they're horrible and they have a viewership of 1, but you're also going to get some fans that are great, offer great insights into the sport property and are able to deliver it in their local language, have been able to follow those local athletes to a depth and cultural understanding of the nuances that the local fan really understands, and deliver that. So I think that is that's really where I see sports going. We talked earlier about delivering in the multiple languages and all of that. To me, that's an obvious statement, right? That's the way it has to be. We have long moved away from a ubiquitous feed to everybody, and we have the ability more so today than ever to service very, very small slivers of niches with only small incremental costs. 10 years ago, again, if you wanted to live stream this exact conversation, this is a $20,000 production, of having a crew and an OB truck parked outside of my house to be able to do this. So we're very fortunate, and I think, in my opinion, in this period, to be able to deliver this kind of localized content affordably.
Okay, and now going to the next question we have for Kimmy. When do we stop referring to content as linear and digital? From where I see it, they're just distribution methods.
Look, I tend to agree with this. It's more or less, I believe we're using those phrases of linear and non-linear and digital, and really because we want to explain something, you know. It's, I agree that in the end, when we go and try to close a contract, we're talking platform neutral. Personally, I like the word media in general. For me, this is an all-encompassing word. You know, I had a discussion right now with my team with what the department that I'm responsible for, what it should be called. And because we're doing, as the person that asked, you know, we're doing digital stuff, we're selling media rights, we're doing all. For me, I think the person, I think it's an anonymous person, is right. It's really more to explain and show what we're talking about. I think that is why we're still using it, and probably this will change in the next few years. There's no doubt, you know, there's a huge convergence of media, and it all comes together, in my opinion. For the moment, we're also still in the mood of, or in the rhythm of, calling it, let's say, those names that we are used to in the past 10, 15 years. Sure. I wouldn't make a big philosophical thing out of it, personally.
Okay. Well, anyone else would make a big I can't even pronounce that. So why don't we leave that one? Actually, we've realized we're out of time now. So I'd like to thank all of our speakers for taking part. I hope that you enjoyed it. We hope that the audience have enjoyed it as well. And for the audience, please stick around for our second panel. That'll be coming up in a few minutes' time. And now what I'm going to do is to hand you back over to Joanna. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome back. I'm back, and thank you, big thank you to Nick and to our excellent panelists, Victor, Kimmy and Thierry, for such a really engaging and insightful session around the future of sports media rights, and we hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. So we'll be moving on to session 2 in just a few moments. Digital sports media transforming the broadcast industry, new streaming and broadcast strategies. So just enough time, a few minutes to go grab yourselves a coffee, a glass of something stronger if it's wine time, your time of the world, and enjoy a short clip from SPORTEL Monaco to get ready for the next installment. I'll be handing over to my colleague, Micheline, who will be presenting the next session, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much for joining us. Stick around and bye for now.
Great to be here because the conversations are so different with all the different people that are at SPORTEL. With some, we're trying to help them bring engagement and new audiences. With some, we're trying to help sell merchandise and tickets. With some, we're trying to unlock media value in areas where they're dark. So it's a different conversation with lots of different parties.
We
come back to SPORTEL each year to meet face-to-face with a lot of our existing clients. And also it's a great time to meet new clients, emerging platforms, new channels, talk to a lot of vendors about new technologies. And it's the face-to-face that matters, I mean, in this international business.
It's got a lot bigger for once, and actually a lot better players. I mean, the reputation of SPORTEL now has changed enormously. You know, it's a must-visit exhibition. And for me, as a supplier, this is where I go to meet, greet, find my clients.
There's one meeting point in the world, specifically for Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. It's to be here. And that's the best opportunity to actually see and meet and talk about future chances and business opportunities. I love the place and I love what they've done for me, so thank you, SPORTEL.
Here we are. That was a throwback to SPORTEL Monaco 2019. For this year's edition, we'll be back in the Grimaldi Forum from the 5th till the 7th of October 2021, so save the date. Back to eTalks now. Hi, and welcome back for those who already watched session 1, and welcome for those who just logged in for session 2. My name is Micheline, and I'm the Marketing and Communication Manager at SPORTEL, and I'm happy to guide you through the second session of the day. It's great so many of you registered for our very first eTalks, enabling us to continue to connect with our community digitally. In case you missed session 1, there's nothing to worry about. It will be available soon on VOD. Next up is the second session of today on how digital sports media are transforming the broadcast industry. In a minute, we'll learn more about new streaming and broadcast strategies, so sit tight. Before that, you can also, and during the session, you can follow us on our social media channels and tag us using hashtag eTalks in all your posts. Before starting the session, I'll quickly run through some housekeeping rules now for those who haven't watched session 1. So please make sure to use a chat box to share your comments. Tell us where you're from and how the weather is. For example, here we are in the sunny Principality of Monaco. So let us know where you're from, where you're tuning in from. On the toolbar at the bottom of your screen, you can choose who you want to share your message with. So you can choose panelists and attendees if you want everyone to see your message. However, if you have a question, make sure it goes into the Q&A tab and not in this chat box. You can also upvote existing questions you want to hear answered live at the end of the session. Before starting the second panel, let's do a quick poll because there's something we would like to know to get in the flow for session number 2. What we'd like to know from you is, how do you watch live sports? Do you watch it through traditional cable, via subscription platforms, or maybe both? You have about 5 seconds to let us know how you watch live sports. Very important now these days when you cannot go to stadium or to the racetrack to watch your favorite sport. So get these answers in. You have about 3 seconds left. I think it will be very interesting to know. So let us know. And here we have the results. So very interesting to see that 24% is watching live sports through traditional cable, 32% subscription platforms, and 44% they use both. So I think that's food for thought for our second session of today. I'll be back after that, but now I'd like to introduce you to the moderator of our second panel, which is David Jones. David, over to you after this short clip.
Yes, good morning, everybody. So far, very interesting day. Welcome to the second session of the day. I hope this is going to be the highlight of your day. It's certainly going to start my day. I had 3 speakers from me. All 3 of them are in the UK. I'm the only sucker that had to get up very, very early to be here this morning. So this second panel is all about how new technologies and digital streaming opportunities will change or have changed the current structure of broadcasting and streaming. Now, we all know that due to COVID and new technologies, traditional cable television, linear television is slowly fading away. Even though they're holding on, they're trying to fight it. They can't survive, I personally think. However, new possibilities are coming up, new platforms are coming up, social media, subscription-based platforms. You can watch it on all different kind of tools that you have nowadays, offering a wider experience for people at home. So this is what we're going to dip into a little bit. I have 3 excellent speakers that will cover all segments here. Number 1, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Anna Lockwood from TELSTRA. She's in London as well. Pedro PRESA from 11 Sports, and Will GODSIFF from SUNSET+VINE. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. Ha ha.
Good afternoon. Good morning.
Is Anna there? Anna.
I am here. They're just starting my video in the background, but I can see you and I can hear you, so no problem.
Perfect. I'm loving my background. I can't move too quick. I'll just fall out of place here. Anna, the first question actually would have been for you, or would be for you. We won't see you, but I want to ask you right away because it's these technical advances that we're looking at today, specifically post-COVID, due to social media, due to esports. A lot has happened around that. Can you share some insight from a technical provider perspective on what is your experience on that right now and what we can maybe expect in the near future?
Sure, happy to do so. So, this year has obviously been a very volatile and changing year for us. As a broadcast services provider, we really do get to see many different customers and industry partners and see how they have responded to the pandemic and what we need to do to help change our services to meet their changing needs. So in March last year, probably almost exactly a year ago, when the pandemic was announced as official and when live sports started to be canceled across the community and the ecosystem, what we were seeing on the background on our networks was that we were seeing a big spike on our networks due to streaming and due to the more update of the big rise in people using the networks, for streaming or gaming or education. Everything moved digitally and everything moved online very quickly. And after that, probably it continued to rise through April, May, June, and then June, July, it leveled off, and it has remained high since then. So we definitely see a very big difference in the usage of our technology. And luckily, as an industry, I think the service providers responded very well. The internet did not collapse. We were able to uplift our headroom and our bandwidth to take, to be able to manage this sudden spike. The other thing that when sports started to come back again, we were asked to do a lot more remote production. So we had already started working on remote production in 2017 in Australia, and we continued to offer remote production services in Australia and internationally. But from March onwards last year, as soon as sports could return, the remote production was suddenly much, much more important. So that's another big trend that we've seen over the last 12 months.
Interesting. So I'm assuming that with remote production, 5K might come into play as well. Not to go in too much detail on 5K, that's an old subject, but this might be something that helps as well, obviously.
Yep, and I think for us in Australia, we've turned on 5G or activated 5G in almost 75% of the country. So it's a very large 5G rollout. And we have been using it in trials for the media and sports and entertainment sector. And I think for us, again, it is something that we're tracking very carefully. It hasn't been rolled out ubiquitously, but it is something that I think will change the nature of how we reach our fans, how we reach our customers. And we've been working, we're part of lots of different 5G alliances. So we've been learning with and working with different other telcos around the world, and doing some very interesting international trials as well. So I think it's, it's something to watch in the future for sure.
Very interesting. I mean, we already saw in the first poll that the majority of people state they watch sports programming on traditional cable, but also on alternative platforms. Very interesting to see that so many still tend to do it on traditional platforms as well. Will, you coming from SUNSET and VINE, which is a traditional, I don't want to say old or antiquated, but it's definitely been one of the oldest players in the rights industry, more and more involved in social media and technology now as well, which is great to see. These developments that we see now, I understand you have quite a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, if people know SUNSET and VINE, quite often they know SUNSET and VINE for the very large scale host broadcasts, these traditional sort of TV distribution deals and everything like that. But more and more, what we're doing is we're focusing more on the digital, on the the Prime videos and everything like that. We're getting a huge amount of business from those areas, and with it comes a new set of challenges. Whereas before we were dancing to a different tune, now I think the biggest thing that we need to understand, and I guess everyone else needs to understand, is why that audience member is watching on that particular platform at that one time. With the poll before, we saw that it was quite a split, but I would imagine that if you asked, I don't know, a bunch of 20-year-olds, you'd get a very different answer. And so these new challenges bring with it, I think, a necessity almost to have a much deeper understanding of that audience, the audience breakdown, and knowing why they're watching, what they're watching, where. And I think that's the biggest challenge. I think that's what everyone is trying to work out. How do you move a traditional model and rather than just push it online, how do you adapt it? How do you change it so that that new audience that you're really trying to appeal to, maybe a younger audience, maybe a less engaged audience, how do you take that and make it interesting to them? There was a really interesting question on the last on the last panel where I don't know who it was, but someone asked, "Is Gen Z a problem?" Well, no, Gen Z is not a problem, but they're just not watching on maybe what we would call traditional means. And so that problem requires a solution, which might be difficult to work out at times, but Gen Z is elsewhere. How are we as an industry going to create products, going to create football matches, live streams, whatever it might be, that creates them that creates engagement and keeps them engaged? And you know, from a SUNSET+VINE perspective, that's where we're seeing the biggest shift.
Right. Now, you said something really important right here that helps me so much to get right over to Pedro. You said fan engagement and football, and we're speaking of rights and everything. Pedro, go, please.
Well,
that's your pitch.
I think first of all, thank you so much for the invitation, for being here today. I think the first question that you guys made really tells a lot about who we are as a company. We still believe a lot in the traditional linear distribution, and we are well positioned in certain markets, and a lot of markets, 8 markets, where we are buying very premium contents and addressing the consumer in a linear way. So distributing the Premier League or the Bundesliga or La Liga or Formula One, NFL, and this is a very it's a growing business for us. It's scalable. We're profitable. We're proud to say that even though obviously the pandemic affected us and affected obviously not only our industry but many other industries out there, we're really proud to say that this year we've been able to bring the company to profitability. At the same time that we are doing this, we also believe that the company needs to prepare for the future. And we've been doing a lot of work as well in positioning the content. So we're proud to call ourselves platform agnostic. We work with more than 150 platforms currently from operators across the globe. But as well, we do broadcast content in certain markets through Facebook, through our own digital platform. I don't know if many of you know, but I was running my own company until November 2020. We were recently acquired by 11 in November with the purpose of exactly building the first global direct-to-the-consumer approach for the company. But our approach is simple. We really want to build the one-stop shop destination for all sports consumers around the globe. We're building this strategy on the purpose of servicing our premium markets, and we're building this offer based around long tail content. So we do believe that there are multiple content partners out there, rights holders that are providing amazing niche content that could basically, so we're really by the fans for the fans. So we're really making sure that we democratize access to as much content as possible to as many consumers out there, and we're building up a content offering that doesn't stop in the premium content, right? So we want the consumer to be engaged with the brands and with our offering on almost a 24/7 basis by providing as much quality content as possible within that time frame, right? And obviously live is a super important format for us, and we keep acquiring content almost on a daily basis. We currently own exclusively around 750 properties globally. So that ranges, as I said, from the Premier League to, for instance, the Brazilian 4th division. We try to base our business model as well, obviously, in the traditional linear operator model, but we're more and more building a scalable business model that relies a lot on the consumer itself, but as well on building a scalable solutions around B2B2C with sponsors, but as well scaling and going a bit beyond to be as well monetizing content around betting, data, and AV. So We really believe that the COVID-19 crisis was actually an accelerating factor for the digitalization. And we really showed strength and as well, I would say courage, that during this time we not only kept investing in Right, but we as well acquired MyCujo, and we're now focusing on delivering this first direct-to-the-consumer global platform towards mid this year, and it's going to be called 11sports.com. Within that platform, we're going to have 3 different verticals. We're going to have 11 Next, 11 Women's, and 11 Esports. We do believe that there's a lot to bet in women's and esports going forward, with a huge focus in football, but as well scaling to multiple other sports as soon as possible.
Fabulous. You said something really, really interesting here, and I'm going to pitch that back to Anna. You said that live broadcasting and live streaming is, of course, very, very important for you. Anna, from your perspective, is Generation Z, to get back to that, or Z, sorry, is that something? Is that an issue, or is that the solution for you as well? Is that I'm sure on a technical perspective, this is something that you have to feel and have to, of course, adapt and provide to as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's a great opportunity. There's, been a real, again, spike in younger people and people across many different countries getting interested in new sports because of the pandemic. So when there was live sports in one country that may not have been that attractive if everywhere else had live sports, suddenly we would get a call and say, oh, can we get Taiwanese baseball, or can we get something from Australia that no one had asked us for previously. So I think the internationalization of sport definitely accelerated over the last 12 months, and the openness to watch things, whether it was a live stream or a live broadcast. On Twitch, one of the most watched events was a chess game, and you think, okay, well, maybe chess wouldn't have been that watched previously, but thanks to Netflix and thanks to not having much else to watch, this chess game or chess as a category grew tremendously. And I think there's all these gamers and streamers who have been doing live streams from their bedrooms, basements, community centers, and suddenly there was a huge interest in watching live streams, and they were ready. They've been doing this for the last couple of years, and getting them set up to join a broadcast or host an esports event or contribute to a gaming event suddenly was a lot more acceptable than it might have been previously. So we've enjoyed seeing that change for sure.
Interesting. Now, I mean, one of the aspects that I've seen that is happening as well in our industry is that today, 21st century, we live in a multicultural society. We have expats throughout the world in all different countries. Now, all these expats, of course, I mean, I lived abroad for many, many years, being an American. I loved to have some American television. There are solutions that are not always legal, but there are technical solutions and online solutions or apps that you can download on your smart TV and everything that you can follow your home and your television from home, entertainment or sports, whatever it is. Now, this is also comes into play when it comes to whatever social media or no, more so when it comes to television. And you said that people have asked, they wanted to see different kinds of sports. I'm going to pitch it real quick to you, Anna. Again, is that something that let's say geo-blocking used to be a big thing. I feel it's kind of dipping away. Can you agree with that, or is that still something that is very, very important?
Well, to the conversation in the previous session, media rights are still important, and we all do absolutely respect that. So wherever the programs are sold, we want to make sure that it's legally being transmitted. But one thing that has really opened up the distribution of content is just it's a lot cheaper to do it now through internet delivery and through new ways of reaching a customer that may not have been able to either afford or acquire the content previously. So at the moment, our team is in New Zealand doing America's Cup, and America's Cup has had an absolutely fantastic take-up of the rights holder broadcasters who can access it now. Some of them are getting it through fiber, some of them are getting it through traditional satellite, but many of them are now getting it through internet delivery, and that's opening up new audiences, that's opening up a new fan base for sailing. And so for us, again, to be able to get it to any country in the world through any technology, as long as they have bought the rights from the America's Cup team, that is what our goal is, to try and make access ubiquitous.
Okay, Will, I'm sure you're sitting right there in a hot seat. You have a lot to say about that one.
Yeah, I mean, like when I look at what Sunset and Vine are doing, and so like where we're seeing huge amounts of success and in terms of rights and everything, maybe I'm biased given my background or everything like that, but once you've had your live, you've had your tentpole event or something like that, how does that event now continue its life cycle? And so I think the supporting content that you're putting out around that, be it in the during or the pre-promotional content or after, and DJ, from what you were saying, you get a bit homesick, you want to watch something, maybe you're not watching something live, but you're watching something on catch up or a bit of VOD or something. That supporting content that is so important, I think, in really creating actually more fans, maybe long term, because say you've got 4 events in 1 year, which isn't out of the ordinary. You've got 4 tentpole events, and then in the in-between periods, what are you doing to service that fan base? So that focus on VOD, that marriage between the live and the complete supporting ecosystem for the VOD delivery, for the highlights, short form, long form, what platform they're on, that becomes I think now we're seeing everything's in one bubble. I don't think you can really separate one from the other because they feed off each other.
Okay, we kind of lost you now. Oh, there you are.
Hello, did you hear the end of that?
No, sorry.
Oh, right. Either someone was calling me to say they're seeing me on SPORTEL, or it was a spam call. I was just saying, I think you're seeing the real harmonious marriage and the need for this sort of 360 release schedule for the live and the supporting VOD content highlights. So they're unanimous. They're one and the same. You can't do one without the other now, we're finding.
Exactly. That's exactly a good point. You can't do one without the other. However, looking at the strategies, how contracts have to be done or should be done possibly in the future, to touch a little bit on rights issues, Pedro, looking at all these different platforms and all these different technologies that we face today and that we have today, is it not so that maybe the rights industry, and maybe even from your side, the construction of a rights contract has to adapt and maybe separate into different, let's say, profit centers?
I will give my personal opinion as well the opinion of how we're structuring things at 11, right? I think the super premium contents will continue to be able to break themselves into different packages and sell this individually in different markets as well, and still be super successful doing it going forward. But I do believe that, and it's public in the news, as more and more you see private equities getting into rights holders. More and more you're going to see rights holders getting involved into the business model. And I do believe that going forward, you would have a portion of the market that would rather work with a single partner, positioning the product in a global environment, right? Rather than selling this through multiple other partners, right? You see You see more and more the rights holders doing this, and you see more and more the globals approaching the market in a more global way. I see as well the big groups and as well companies like 11 joining forces with different types of entertainment platforms. You see how Disney is bundling subscriptions between ESPN Plus and Disney Plus, and how this is becoming more and more successful. So I really believe that, yes, point number one, I really believe that the super premium contents will be able to continue bundling themselves and separating themselves into different tiers, different types of packages that they sell. But I do believe as well that we're going to see a trend where the mid-tier, or as well premium but not super premium, will start gathering forces with a single production and distribution partner, and then selling the rights and then exploiting this together, not only when it comes to selling this traditionally to operators, especially when it comes to the local markets, but as well how they can work together to position this in dark markets, how they can work together to position this in betting, how can they work together as well to position this against future business models around the community, such as e-commerce. I really believe that we're going to have a mix basically going forward.
Yes, interesting. Now, speaking of new platforms as well, one big aspect that's coming up, and we should definitely touch here as well, is subscription-based platform streaming possibilities. More and more subscription-based possibilities are out there for the audiences as well. Now, we know, just to give a little bit of background, looking at an average income in the US or even in Europe, we're looking at 3,000 to 5,000 euros or dollars a person after you pay your taxes and everything, your rent or your mortgages and this and that and so on so much. You maybe are left over with, or you're left with, let's say $1,500, $2,000. Then comes whatever luxury you have, including entertainment and sports and whatever program you want to have at home. At an average, cable is, with your package, your internet and telephone and television package, you're looking at around $95 or euros in Europe as well. So now more and more platforms are appearing and are asking the user or the audience or fans to pay. You have a cable package already, which gives you a certain amount. Now you have providers, DAZN, 11 Sports, and so forth. Everybody has a certain package that is offering. Well, now even over the last couple of years already, even the leagues and the brands are offering their own television platforms. NFL, for instance, a really good example right now. The NFL is asking $100 billion. They're doubling their rights deal for with Disney and everything. Isn't that outrageous? For one, on the right side, let's touch that real quick. On the right side, does that even work? I'm asking a cable provider for that much money, but I'm also running my own channels. Maybe, I'd say.
It's an interesting point, because ultimately that will feed back down to the consumer, won't it? It's going to end up, it ultimately impacts the consumer's wallet, and what you end up with is you weigh up the value with the cost versus the offering. And we actually saw quite back in, I think it was October, the Premier League started doing pay-per-view football matches, and it was £15. It was very brief because the audience reaction was well, not great, shall we say. And they actually started pushing all the money they would have spent on those pay-per-views into a charity cause, which raised the profile of it, and eventually it was pulled quite sharp. So I mean, ultimately it's really going to come down to, is what you're offering, first of all, worth it, but different from what they can get elsewhere. And that if teams or federations are going to start their own subscription-based model service or something like that, what are they going to take away from what they've currently got? from from their social pages, because there's so much content you can get on social. There's so much good content as well. How are you going to take away from that, or are you just going to add access on the subscription-based side? Yeah, I mean, there'll come a point where the audience says no, but it's finding that happy medium.
That's a good point right there. And maybe in this moment, I'd like to ask our technical director, Jennifer, we have a second poll that exactly asks that question. Can we run that poll? Is it reasonable to pressure fans into subscribing into multiple platforms? Yes or no? You have a couple of seconds for that, and I'm curious to see what comes out of that. It's going to be a harsh reality, I think. 2, 4. Do we have the responses? No. Interesting. Very good. So exactly, that's an interesting point here. It is not reasonable. Yeah, exactly that. As I started, average income is around 3,000 after you pay everything. Now you have to pay additional. I want the NFL package. I want the NBA package. I want this package. I want the La Liga package. And all of a sudden you're sitting with 300 to 500 additional euros or dollars at home, and you don't have much money left. And as Will just said, I mean, it all comes down to the fans and the audience. They're ultimately they're gonna break down at one point and say, no, we have to have a different kind of solution here. Pedro, that's something for you.
We do agree with that. First, with the opinion of the consumer, of the people watching the panel today, but with your thoughts, we don't think it's fair as well. So we don't think it's fair as well to overpay for rights, because when you overpay for rights, the ultimate person suffering is the fan, right? Because you will have to overprice a specific product. And ultimately, this content will not be able to reach the end consumer. And sports without fans, it's not sports, right? So that's what we're really proud of at 11. We really have a low-cost approach when it comes to charging the subscriber for premium content. As an example, in Portugal, we're charging far less than the competitors in market. We charge $9.99 per month. To have access to the full portfolio of content that includes motorsports, to the Champions League, the Bundesliga, La Liga, right? I'm speaking about Euros. But then we adapt as well, especially during COVID times and the impact the economy had on families. We have different packages that we offer to the consumer, not obliging the consumer to subscribe the whole amount of content. So we have a motorsports package. We have a 2-day-a-week package for the Champions League only. So we really try to assess on a regular basis on how we can adapt the product to the consumer to make sure that we don't impact the wallets, and at the same time the consumer is enabled to watch the specific content. On the other side, we really feel that going forward, it's needed more and more. So we're not competing only, as you said, with other sports broadcasters. We're now competing against Amazon Prime, against Netflix, against Twitch, against YouTube, free platforms. So we really what we're gonna see more and more going forward is that you will have companies bundling subscriptions together to consumers in specific markets, as I explained before. I don't think it's necessary to be a war. I think there will be definitely a consolidation of the market going forward. There's a need for that. And at the same time, I don't think that rights holders with their OTT platforms will be competitors of distribution channels. We're partners. I do believe that what rights holders are doing is they're trying to position their products to different types of consumers and complementing the work of what the distributors are doing. And I do think that rights holders going forward will continue to prefer to work with partners like 11 and our competitors. Yeah, I think the future from our perspective, what we're going to keep working for is trying to adapt to what the consumer can pay, and try to make sure that not only we are in as many platforms as possible, that as well we are trying to adapt the price to the specific consumer, and as well the offer as well, dividing it into different packages.
Right. Anna, what is your point of view on this, please?
Yeah, I mean, from a technology provider perspective, I can say that the move or the thrust direct to consumer is here, and it's absolutely accelerating. How that gets commercialized is different, whether it's subscription or advertising or pay-per-view, but absolutely clear that the requirement to reach the consumer on digital platforms is large and growing. And I think for us, one of the interesting things has been our own investment. So, over the last 12 months, we've put a lot of investment into our own backbone and our own networks, both in Australia and internationally. We've invested in India and in China because those were the two regions where we didn't have a lot of media presence, but where our customers needed to get to reach those direct-to-consumer fans or audiences. And we've also seen other large, what we call hyperscalers, so the Facebooks, the Amazons, the Netflixes, the Googles, investing in networks so that they can reach audiences in Asia. So it's definitely not going to stop. I think we'll continue to see growth in the direct-to-consumer market. But to Pedro and Will's point, how that gets commercialized and who actually pays for what is still playing out.
Interesting, very interesting. Now, of course, into all that, we also have to consider social media. We have TikToks, we have Instagrams, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have all these live possibilities now. Back to me, I'm speaking. Will, you have more insight on that point as well.
Yeah, so social is an interesting one because if you've got your own platform, people have come there for a reason. They've come there for you. You might have multiple subjects, matches, whatever it might be, but on social media there's such fierce competition, and at times it can almost feel a little bit like you're screaming into the void. You're screaming, and are people engaging? Are people listening? What's also interesting is you're seeing a new platform starts up, TikTok, and suddenly everyone's on it. Everyone sees the possibilities onto it. And so what happens when a new platform turns up, and a new one, and a new one, and suddenly a sports organization, federation, club, you've got this whole row of assets, of platforms that you're trying to engage with a slightly different community on, a slightly different audience. And I think that further down the line there may even come a breaking point where you're going to have to weigh up, is that investment worth it? What are we seeing from it? Is there a road to monetize it? And actually you're seeing with the social media platforms, that monetization, what's the return? It's not just audience numbers, it's not just views, it's now, how do you monetize that audience? TikTok is looking at ways to monetize its audience, which can be quite problematic when they're so young, but they've moved into monetization much quicker than any of the other social platforms, almost out of necessity, almost out of the knowledge that once you start a platform, the race is on to monetize that audience, to collect that audience and then monetize it. Social's not going anywhere, but the important thing is to know, either as a rights holder, a team, a federation, who are you talking to on that individual platform, and ultimately further down the line, is it worth it? Can you make some money out of it?
Yeah, you said a good point. I mean, social media is definitely here to stay. I mean, the other question ultimately on a technical point of view as well, Anna, you can tell me something about that, or us, is social media and the future of social media and all these additional platforms. Is this something that we can count on is going to replace certain streaming or traditional streaming platforms that we know thus far?
I think it's a rich ecosystem. So I wouldn't say replace, but certainly whether you're watching a whole game or whether you're watching highlights or whether you're doing something interactive, people would engage across many different platforms and many different kind of communities. And so the real trick is, how do you reach people across a sport or across a code in different ways through different platforms and get their interest and interactivity that won't just come from the television. And I mean, for me, again, the last 4 or 5 years, we've been doing a lot with game publishers, with gamers and streamers, with the esports community, and that is digitally native. It is cloud native. They do go for the digital audiences first and foremost, and then if they can sell it to more traditional broadcasters and rights holders, that's an upsell or an upside from a media rights perspective. And this audience, and it's not just by age, but the audience that interacts with games and esports is super social. So they'll be chatting and having competitions, and it's highly interactive, and it's just a very different way to experience sports and competition than maybe a traditional way. So I think we've got quite a lot to learn from the gaming and esports community on how we can bring some of that interactivity across platforms into more traditional sports. And obviously there are things which traditional sports is also teaching esports from a storytelling and from a content perspective. So over the last year, we've seen far more synergy and far more interaction between these two worlds. And I think that will just continue.
Yeah, most definitely. And also from a revenue perspective, Pedro, this is back to you as well, a revenue perspective here on social media as well. We covered rights deals and technical deals and this and that, and social media is coming more and more into place. How does it look like in the future there for monetization?
It's a very good question. We do see social media as a complement of our business, and we do work with social media in a market by market approach. So we have different strategies, ultimately always obviously looking into how we drive commercial sustainability to the projects we're doing in each market, right? So as an example, in Myanmar, we're working with free-to-air, and we started using Facebook was a really successful platform when we were operating there. Now, obviously, due to the reasons that we all know, we're not operating. But we used Facebook a lot to put a few matches per week, so we could drive people and publicize the content that we were broadcasting on TV at the time, and we had a very successful case there. But we do work there with platforms where we're monetizing directly the consumer, and we do see this more and more happening. During the pandemic, we did a very successful project with Twitter, broadcasting the local baseball league. When there was no content available out there, we had millions of people watching this content through Twitter. But when we speak about the specific case of football, we're working with platforms like OneFootball and, for instance, YouTube, where in the case of YouTube, we're charging. In Italy, we're distributing the content through our platform, but we're positioning as well a channel within YouTube, and we're charging on a pay-per-view basis and subscription basis as well through YouTube. So again, we're multi-platform, we're platform agnostic. Obviously, we prefer for the consumer to watch the content in our platform because that's where we offer the best experience and where we believe we have the most tailor-made approach to what the consumer wants. But we do want to be where the consumer is, and if that means leveraging third-party platforms, positioning our brand and distributing directly to the consumer there, perfect, even better. And again, if that platform allows us to monetize the consumer directly, then obviously that's the preferred scenario, such as the one we have with YouTube in Italy.
Okay.
Can I jump in and add a little button on that, because it's a really interesting point that Pedro has raised, in that as soon as you leave your own ecosystem and you go onto a social platform, monetization, you're suddenly jumping through someone else's hoops. So like, say if you're trying to monetize your own VOD or something like that, if you're trying to monetize it on Facebook, it's got to be a certain length. If you want to put ad breaks on your on your highlights on YouTube, it's got to be, I think, over 8 minutes now before you can put ad breaks in. And so that adds another layer of something you've got to think about in your production. You know, how are you going to effectively monetize all that content? You know, you've now got to think, right, I can't make a 2-minute highlight, so I've got to make a 3-minute and 1-second highlight so that I can monetize it on Facebook, which is just another added hoop that they make you jump through.
Interesting. Very good. Wow. A lot of information to process so far. We're going to go into the Q&A now. We have a couple of minutes left. And I already have one question for Will right here. Do you have, in regards to digital strategies, do you have a specific example where digital led to eyeballs? And please, 1 second, audience, please send us your questions in. Q&A is now open. We're going to take questions and we're trying to answer as many as possible. Sorry, Will, there you go.
Yeah, that's right. I think the most interesting, relevant one is probably the INEOS 159 project, where Eliud Kipchoge was attempting to run under 2 hours, a sub 2 hour marathon. And that SUNSET+VINE was doing everything for that. We were doing production, we were doing distribution, we were doing digital, we were managing the live stream, moderation, and things like that. And it really was a digital first push. We put it out through, we distributed it through some linear channels as well, but it really was a digital first push. We broke a deal with YouTube so that we had an exclusivity deal with YouTube, whereby we wouldn't stream it on any other platform, social media platform, I should say. It was on some other digital platforms, but we broke that deal with YouTube. But then in support of that, again, we had all the preparation material whereby, you know, having done it, we saw how exciting it was. But how do you make 2 hours of one man running with support runners interesting to an audience who may not find that interesting? Because with a London Marathon or something like that, you're cutting between the men's, the women's, the fun run, and everything like that. And so you've got these little natural breaks. With a 2 hour marathon, you're there and you're watching it. And so the first thing we did was we upped the ante in the build up. You know, we contextualized it. We made sure that everyone and anyone, as many people as we could, knew who Eliud Kipchoge was, why it was so difficult to run a 2 hour marathon, and why they should care. And then once we were in the live, we went with a second screen experience, whereby you were able to watch it, but then you could also have it on your mobile. And by doing this, we were able to supplement loads of additional data. You could see all his split times. You could see how where he was on the course. You could see how he was doing. It really added to the experience for those that wanted a bit more information, and was a way of helping to continue to keep that audience engaged. Because as I say, 2 hours, well, 1 hour 59 and I think 40 seconds in the end, 41 seconds. That's a long time where you're essentially following one piece of action. And so that was how that digital strategy evolved. And there was some linear, but that digital strategy evolved to really highlight how big a human achievement that was. And obviously, great that he did it.
Interesting. I mean, either we stunned everybody with all the information, or we lost everybody. There are a few questions coming in, but I'd like to continue with this one as well. Pedro, do you have an up-to-date example?
Well,
sure you do.
It's a very good question, and we have products that are only digital, and without them, without the digital platform that we own and 100% control over our streaming technology, we would not be able to actually build a sustainable business model around this. So I can name around 600 competitions that we're currently broadcasting only digitally. That obviously enabling this through streaming was the only way that we could afford, with the no-touch production approach, and as well asking the rights holder to provide the content to us through our streaming platform, and then we monetize this in 3 ways: sponsorship advertising, betting, and as well a paywall, sometimes pay-per-view or bundles. So this is a way I can tell you right away, and I can, as I named 600 competitions currently, we're broadcasting only digitally. But in the premium side as well, we have the specific example of the Belgium Pro League. For the first time, we were able to acquire the rights in the direct markets. We're super proud of what we're building, the home of Belgium football. But through the deal, we as well onboarded the international rights. If it wasn't as well for the digital and streaming distribution that we have currently, and as well with other partners, we would not be able to now be trying to monetize this content in some dark markets where we were not able to position it on the linear channels. So that's a clear example of how the extension of the digital side of the business is helping the more traditional sides to reach revenues where before they would not be able to even think about it.
Anna, do you have anything to add to that?
I'm going to ask a question from the chat because I think this is a really good one. And it's from Helmut. And he says, if you look at current developments, only digital, how will the NFT impact added sales to digital influencers and such? And now being a hype product, but probably in itself offers a gigantic value as an upsell. So I think probably everybody on this call has been tracking, the NBA hotshot with great interest and seeing, how they are working in this space. And for anyone who hasn't heard about it before, because I've only started getting interested and learning about it recently, NFT stands for non-fungible tokens. And yes, I think it is going to have a very big impact. And we, again, the pioneers like the NBA who are taking the kind of first steps into this new world are indeed I think doing a very important service to all of us. And I'd be curious to hear from Will and Pedro how that's manifesting in their businesses, but we are certainly starting to see it in our clients. And I will also say that one of the big areas of growth that we've seen over the last 12 months has been around streaming for these or adjacent markets like betting, like NFTs, where there's suddenly a completely new use for data, for a stream. And that's been something that we have been tracking closely. So Will and Pedro, I'd love to hear your comments on NFTs if you have any.
You want to start, Will, or shall I start?
Feel free.
So I can go really quickly. I think definitely that's an interesting area for the company. Definitely not something we're exploiting currently. We have a lot of focus still on what we're doing. So as I explained in the beginning, we're launching 11sports.com mid this year, and NFTs are definitely an important part of the future of that project, right? How we can create products and how can we create a token that can enable people to transaction within our platform and keep the token circulating internally. Is it for buying content, but at the same time as well buying different products around e-commerce related to the specific teams that we are broadcasting at that moment in time. But I think it's a bit too early, at least in our side. Definitely something we're looking with a lot of attention, looking closely, and we definitely believe this is going to be part of the future of the company. It's in our roadmap, but too early to actually go and do a deep dive on it. But yeah, it's a very good question.
Yeah, I think ultimately, like most things, it's really going to depend on the audience reaction to it. They're still, I mean, they've been around for I think a couple of years now, but they've only really just started appearing in news places where everyone will see them. And I'm still seeing a lot of people go, NF what? Even when you say what it is, non-fungible token, people are sort of like, right, okay. And so I think there's almost that barrier that needs to be broken down. In a similar way to Pedro, it's something that Sunset and Vine are aware of, but it's further down the line than where we are currently.
Perfect. Wow. Okay, that basically perfect ending to this panel. This was amazing. A lot of information. We have covered a lot, actually a lot. We could have made 3 panels out of all this. And I'm sure we're gonna, I do want to have another panel or another few panels on these subjects, and I'm gonna split them up again. And this is something that we definitely have to continue to follow and see what's happening, because new technology and the adaptation of rights and fan engagement and the strain on fans' pockets is definitely something we all have to be aware about. And I thank you so much. Very, very interesting. You all are great. Your input was fantastic. I thank the audience for being here. Of course, my colleagues at SPORTEL for setting this up and making this possible. Everything worked out fine. I wish you all a great evening. I'm going to have a great day now. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thank y'all for being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So.
Thanks, David. Thank you for getting up so early and having your morning coffee a bit earlier than normally. Thanks to our fantastic panelists, Anna, Will, and Pedro, for such an excellent and very inspiring session. I would like to say a massive thank you to our entire speaker lineup today. I think they were quite amazing, weren't they? So, and also thanks from all of us here in the eTalks team for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our program and our production. Our next event will be on the 8th of April, so we look forward to seeing you there. The eTalks will be on esports, and it will be in collaboration with Esports Insider. Registrations for these panels will open shortly. Save a spot also for our future events in May on the future of sports tech, and there's another one coming up in July on sports business opportunities in the US. Before leaving us, please take a few minutes to fill out a short survey and let us know what you thought. And of course, we look forward to seeing you physically live again from the 5th till the 7th of October in Monaco. My name is Micheline. Thank you so much for watching. In the meantime, stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.